Welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to Stuff No One Told Us About Weight Loss. My name is Eloise and I'm here with Aaron. And today we're talking about creating an environment that is going to support your new habits.
So environment's a really interesting thing because it plays a big role in how well we can stick to new habits when we try to create them.
I think a lot of us don't think about how much of a role it really does play.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the thing is, your environment can trigger both good habits and it can also trigger bad habits or habits that are working against you. So we have a bit of a role to play in shaping our own environment. Earlier in our podcast series, we actually spoke about a concept called the elephant and the rider.
It was episode 1, actually.
Our very first episode.
Very badly filmed, but good information.
If you want to learn more about that, because it really sets the scene for, there's 3 major components here, is imagine the rider represents your conscious brain, the thinking brain, the problem-solving brain. The elephant represents your subconscious brain or your habit brain. And then the path that both the elephant and the rider are on represents the environment. So if the environment, imagine a guy riding an elephant, if there's lots of trees and there's lots of obstacles that the elephant has to go over, it makes it harder for them both to reach the destination. But if the environment is set up where it's a nice, clearly defined path, it's going to make it easier for both the rider and the elephant to reach that destination.
Yeah, I find this a really helpful way to think about it because, if the path is fully overgrown, it's going to be really difficult for you to get where you want to go. And it's kind of the same. Like if you're living in a house that's fully overgrown, it's going to be hard to cook food in a place where it's full of mess and clutter. It's going to be difficult for you to do a workout if you have no space to work out.
Yeah. So it adds more friction if there's things that you have to overcome if you're trying to set up new habits. So you want to think about, how can I make this as easy as possible for me to just get into this new habit and these new behaviors without having to overcome all these obstacles.
Yeah, and like we speak about quite a lot, and we spoke about it in the last episode, you don't have to fully change your environment overnight.
Yeah.
Small changes really make massive differences when it comes to following new habits and sticking to new habits. You don't have to fully clean your house and declutter your entire house and set up all like a gym in your house and like do all this stuff. It's not required.
Yeah.
You can do that if you want to, but you don't have to in order to make habits accessible to you and in order to make big changes in your life. Really small shifts in different parts of your house and different parts of your routine are going to really help.
Yeah, and that whole thing of like, it doesn't have to be all at once. You want to start with just one thing at a time. You know, we're very big on making the habits as easy as possible. And part of that is breaking it down into focusing on one thing at a time. If we're trying to do an overhaul of our whole house, that's going to be a mammoth task. You've already got resistance there because it seems like a huge thing for you to do. But if you're just, putting your workout clothes out the night before and you've done nothing else, like that's really easy for you to do. So there's less resistance there, and we can start to, get into the habit of doing that, and then we can start to do something else that's also conducive to it.
So we're just going to share with you 3 different sort of areas that you can look at when it comes to setting up your environment. And the first one is to make the space that you want to do these habits in really accessible and really nice to be in.
Yeah, because if we think about it, a environment, say where you're cooking or you're working out, it's going to be much more motivating if it's a nice clean environment. It's, there's not many things that you have to worry about in terms of potential hazards or, things that you have to clean first to then do the thing. It's really inviting. It's really easy for you to do.
Yeah. And again, thinking about how can you just make your environment a little bit better, right? Because I know that there are some people who are listening who have kids who don't necessarily have full control over their full environment. There's going to be some clutter. There's going to be other people possibly living there. And so you don't have to fully change everything. You don't have to force everyone else to live the way you want to live. You just have to make small upgrades in ways where you can do that.
Yeah.
For example, you have control over keeping your kitchen clean to an extent. You have control over organizing things a little bit better.
That's right. Like even just a simple thing of putting the fruit bowl on the bench and having fruit there. Like it makes it so much easier for you to grab a piece of fruit than if it's tucked away in the fridge somewhere where it's out of sight, out of mind, and it typically goes moldy.
And making sure, again, that you're topping it up regularly. If that becomes a routine where you top the fruit bowl up, you always have fresh fruit there, not fruit that's been in there for 3 weeks. You're going to be much more likely to associate the fruit with a pleasant experience. And another way you can do that is when you buy fruit, chop it up as soon as you get home, chop up the veggies, have them in the front of the fridge where they're fully accessible, ready to go. So you can just grab it and go. That's one easy way where you can set your environment up for success.
Yeah. The next area is your workout space. So if you're doing regular workouts, give yourself actually some space. Like that's the biggest hurdle is for a lot of people. And, we hear from some clients as well that, it's hard to work out at home because then they've got to like move the car out, or they've got to like move things that are in the garage out of the way so that then they can do their workout. And if it's 6 o'clock in the morning and that's the only time you've got to work out, you don't want to be doing that stuff at 6 a.m. You want to have it nice and available so you can just get in there and it's seamless. You can get into your workout and already start.
Yeah. And again, some people don't have full dedicated gyms. That's fine. Decide what area of your house you're going to use and just make sure that it's a little bit clutter-free before you're going to work out.
Yeah.
So it's 6 p.m. It's time for me to work out. Now I'm going to clean it. Do it in the morning or do it a few hours before you're going to actually use it, if that's possible for you. And again, if that's not possible, you're going to the gym, that's fine too. Or you're going to work out outside, that's fine too.
Yeah. And then the next one, of course, is journaling. We're big on journaling because it's allowing you to start to unpack a lot of the thoughts and a lot of what's going on inside your mind and really take an objective view of that. And one of the roadblocks to journaling is, just the act of getting the journal out.
One of the things a lot of people say is that I just forget. I just forget to do it. And so having it within eyesight is an easy way for that to become a non-issue.
Yeah, or one of the things actually I've started doing, because this is something that I've really struggled to do, is a journaling habit. And I started moving it in a spot where I was going to see it, but that wasn't enough. And now what I do is actually put my wallet and keys on top of my journal. So I know that I have to, grab my wallet and keys each day. And if they're on top of my journal, it's a trigger to go, all right, I need to fill that out.
Yeah, I mean, you could even do it the opposite way if that's even not enough. If you grab your wallet and keys and ignore the journal, put the journal on top of the wallet and keys.
Yeah.
So you have to physically pick it up and move it in order for you to get your wallet and keys, which means that once you pick it up, you could be like, okay, I've got to fill this out.
Yeah.
Or I've got to take it with me to work or whatever it is.
Yeah. Or another thing that I had a client actually do was she said, she was finding it was really difficult to journal each night. So she actually put the journal in the bathroom next to where she brushes her teeth. Because she said, I brush my teeth each night without fail. What about if we put the journal there? So I'm triggered every night. I've got to fill this out. And it worked. It was really effective for her to do that.
Yeah, I find it helpful for me to have the journal on the coffee table because in the morning I wake up and I go and I sit on the couch. I know that having the journal there means that I'm going to see it and I'm going to pick it up and use it.
Yeah.
Another thing could be having it on your desk. Again, put it on top of your keyboard.
Yeah.
You're not going to use the computer without moving it physically. So you're going to need to to pick it up. And once you've picked it up, let's be honest, it's quite easy to use it.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's just sitting there, sometimes you can just look at it and be like, not going to use it. But if you've got to physically move it, it gives you that extra step of like, okay, this is a thing that I've got to do.
That's right.
And one more way to make your home environment or your office environment a little bit more conducive to your habits and goals is to use something like Post-it notes. Really simple. something that we use personally on our mirror. We have some post-it notes with just a few quotes or reminders. You can do this on your desktop, as in like at work, on your computer, have little post-it notes stuck on your desktop so that you remind yourself of things that you want to remember. Have them stuck on your mirrors at home. Have them stuck next to your bed. Have your phone or your computer screensaver set up with images or quotes or anything that's reminding you of what your goals are and the type of person you want to be today and how you want to live your life.
So the second thing that we want to consider is really making those positive habits more convenient and easy to follow through on. So as we've just sort of briefly spoken about, things such as keeping a water bottle in the car or the desk or at different locations around your house. Like if you have a goal to start drinking more water, have several of them, all over the place. Like where you would normally spend time, have a water bottle there. So if you're in the car, you've got one. If you're at your desk, you've got one. And then you're basically taking away the excuse that you would give yourself of like, oh, well, it just wasn't near me. You're making that really accessible for yourself.
It's similar to, say, if you're someone who wants to start cooking more at home. If you're someone who previously hasn't cooked much at home, you probably aren't thinking ahead about what's for dinner because you're like, we'll just order or we'll just go out. Whereas if you sit down at the start of the week and you go, okay, each day, here's what I'm going to eat. Here's my grocery list. You go out and you buy all the ingredients. You're going to be much more likely to follow through. It's going to make it so much easier because you don't have to think about it in the afternoon and be like, shit, what's for dinner? I've got to now go to the grocery store and buy food. In that instance, you're going to be like, okay, well, Uber Eats.
Yeah.
It's going to be, you want to make it easier for yourself where possible. And planning ahead what you're going to eat is one really simple thing that can just make it so much easier.
That's right. Your brain's going to go to default on what's the least path of resistance. So if we're planning ahead what that's going to be when we're nice and fresh and our conscious brain is full of energy, then when it comes time to, executing on that, we've already done the hard work of working out what we're going to do, what the choices are. And it's the same with your workouts, pre-planning your workouts in ahead of time and what those workouts are going to be so that when it comes time to doing a workout session, if that's at the end of the day and you've had a hard day, like you're not having to then make decisions around, am I going to do this one or am I going to do that one? And then,
I mean, it's particularly if you are someone who follows like workout videos, for example. I know that for myself, it's something that I've been in the bad habit of previously is like, all right, I'm going to do a yoga workout. And then I'll sit down, okay, it's time for me to work out. It's like 6 o'clock or whatever. And I'll sit down and start scrolling through all the workouts.
Yeah.
And I'll just be like, oh, which one do I want to do today? And then 15 minutes later, I've just wasted 15 minutes scrolling through trying to decide which workout looks nice for me to do.
Yeah.
So now what I do is I plan that ahead and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this particular yoga workout today.
Yeah.
Don't let me sit down at the workout time and pick the workout then, because that is a recipe for disaster. Sometimes in the past, I have even sat down. It sounds so silly now, but I have sat down and gone, okay, I'm doing a workout, and I literally will sit there scrolling and get distracted, end up on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and literally not work out.
Yeah.
I just spent my entire workout time just scrolling through workouts, watching other people work out.
Yeah.
And I never actually did anything.
I'm working out in here. in
but
my
it's
head.
crazy. It's crazy. And I'm sure someone else listening has done that as well.
Well, actually, funny, that is exactly the same as, I used to work at a gym a few years ago, and I would see the same thing time and time again. People would come in without a plan, and then they would then try to work out what they were doing when they were at the gym.
Yeah, they'll walk over here, I'll walk on the treadmill for a little bit, or I'll go and pick up a dumbbell.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do this, this machine, I'll do some pressing.
Yeah.
I'll do a bit of this, and before you know it, you've really done nothing.
Well, and that's right. and also too, those same people, they would have the same routine. So they'd come in, they'd get on the treadmill, and as they're walking, they're either watching the TV on the treadmill or, they're just scrolling social media. Then they'd get off and they kind of look a little bit puzzled going, what am I going to do now?
Next?
And then they'd do the same thing. They'd just jump on a machine and go from machine to machine not really having a plan. They just do a few reps and move to the next one. And then they were also the people that would likely then drop off after a while. So you got to think about, like, if you've made yourself a plan, you're also committing yourself for a bit of a longer term as well.
It reduces that friction of having to make another decision.
Yeah.
Because the more decisions you have to make in those moments where you need to be taking action, the more likely you are to not do something, or to quit, or to do something that's not helpful. Like in the example of the workout. If you plan your workout, you're likely to go to the gym and just do the workout and then leave. Or you're likely to put the video on, follow the video, and then move on with your day. Whereas if you haven't planned it, it's just giving you that opportunity. It's basically just you saying, okay, I'm practically not going to do this anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
I know that's it for me. If I'm like, I'll do a workout, but I haven't decided which workout, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Like, and we're sort of talking about this one extensively, but this is a big thing. Like, I even fall into that trap too. Like, this is what I do for a living. You know, I help people with workouts. I help people with teaching new habits and weight loss and stuff like that. But I fall into the same trap too. If I haven't pre-planned out my workouts, I'll get to the gym and just be like, well, what am I going to do?
Yeah. And me too as well. I mean, another one that is quite interesting and a trap that I've fallen into as well, again, that sounds quite silly, but I would be like, okay, I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
And then I would sit down and be like, all right, which podcast am I going to listen to today on my walk? Half an hour later, I'm like, I'll just listen to it here. I'll just listen to the podcast here.
Yeah.
Trying to scroll through and be like, which will I listen to on my walk, is giving me that chance to get distracted and not go.
Yeah.
Whereas if I sit down and I go, okay, today I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to listen to this podcast or this audio book while I'm walking, I'm going to go for that walk because it's super easy. There's no decisions to be made.
Yeah.
It's just another roadblock.
Yeah, that's right.
It really sounds
remove
silly when I think about it, but I'm sure that other people do it too.
Yeah. No, it's it's one of those things, like, you want to try and remove as many of the decisions that you're going to have to make at the time of executing as possible. Make it as seamless as you can.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really interesting that a lot of people can do that's really simple to help them stick to things is looking at having habit promoting apps on your phone. You know, really simple ones that just keep a track of it so that you build that habit of tracking your habits.
And this is one that's actually something I've done really recently as well, is on my home screen of my phone. So when I first unlock my phone, the first screen that I see, it used to just have a lot of social media apps. So I would just open my phone and click on a social media app and be off to the races with scrolling. Whereas now what I've done is I've actually removed some of those and I've put them a few screens. So I have to do a few scrolls and then I have to click into a folder in order to get to those apps. But in doing that, what I've done is I've freed up space for me to put my workout apps, my habit tracking apps on my home screen. So when I open my phone, I see the app where I track my habits and I can just tap into it and tick the habit off.
Yeah.
And so now that's my routine versus that scrolling of Instagram or whatever that used to be on my home screen and easy to access.
Yeah. And just on that same point of like making these habits more accessible, it can kind of work in promoting the habit or the action that you want to take. So for example, like with your eating, say you have an intention of eating less, starting to control your portion sizes. A really easy way to do that and have your environment help you out with that is to start buying smaller plate sizes, serving up your food in smaller plates or bowls or cups, because that makes a difference. We're sort of pre-programmed to eat what's on the plate, and if we then reduce the size of the plate, that's going to naturally lead to less food.
On that note as well, I really like to eat off like teaspoons.
Yeah.
So, and it sounds weird, maybe not for like a soup or something, but if I'm eating a meal that's with a spoon, usually it's dessert, let's be honest, but I will eat it with a teaspoon in a really small bowl or even like ice cream in a mug. With a teaspoon, it means that you eat it slower. Because when you have a big spoon and you just like dig in, it's really easy to get a lot of food into your mouth really quickly.
Yeah.
And if one of my habits I want to work on is eating slower, if I eat from a smaller bowl, already I've got a smaller portion and I eat it with a teaspoon, I'm really forcing that slow eating.
Yeah.
The smaller bites that really helps.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds silly, but that's a habit that really helps with weight loss.
That's actually a really funny habit because, like, I thought the same thing, but for a different reason, to use teaspoons, especially when eating ice cream. When I was a kid, we'd normally have like a normal dessert spoon and you'd eat it quite quickly. And then I figured, well, how about if we use a teaspoon because it'll last longer and then you get to enjoy it for longer. And it was just like, I still do the same thing to this day, like eat it with a teaspoon. And Eloise is right. Like, it actually slows you down. And I find sometimes when I'm eating ice cream with a teaspoon, like, I get 3/4 of the way through and I'm like, I don't really feel like actually eating any more.
Yeah.
Whereas if you eat it with a dessert spoon, you're able to eat it much quicker.
Yeah, it's a really simple thing. And yeah, people might make fun of you, but like, let's be honest, you're building good habits and you're building positive habits and you're becoming the person you want to be. So joke's on them.
That's right. So just like with good habits where we want to try and reduce the friction as much as possible, we can actually use that same concept in reverse for habits that we want to stop doing or that are potentially roadblocks from us reaching our goals. We want to increase the friction where possible.
Yeah. We want to make unhelpful habits harder to do while we're making helpful habits easier to do.
Yeah. And a really easy one you can start with this is if you know that you, say, mindlessly snack on things like biscuits and chocolate, etc., put them in a position in the kitchen somewhere where it's harder to get to. You know, you might have to move several things out of the way to then access those things. And it's enough time for your conscious brain to kick in and go, is this what I want to do?
Yeah, you want to give yourself space to make a decision.
Yeah.
Rather than allow it to just go on autopilot and just grab and go. And this is an interesting one as well, because what we're not saying is that you shouldn't eat these foods.
Yeah.
And we're not saying that putting it in a harder to reach place means that you should never eat it.
Yeah.
It's more just, again, allowing yourself to have the space to make a choice that you want to make.
That's right.
So you can still make the choice of, yes, I'm going to eat this right now. But in making it harder to reach, what has gone from a mindless activity now becomes a conscious choice. And when you're making conscious choices, you're much more likely to eat that food slower. You're much more likely to eat less of that food and still enjoy it, but also reach your goals.
Yeah.
Rather than, I mean, the classic example is having lollies on your desk.
Yeah.
You are
Giving
going
snacks.
to snack on those lollies mindlessly. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
If I have a bowl of lollies in front of me, that's probably going to happen. So just putting those lollies in a different place where you don't just stare at them all day is going to make it more likely that you're making mindful choices when you're having the lollies.
Yeah. And it's the same with anything. Like, if you want to scroll less on social media, don't have the apps on your home screen. As I always said before, like, have apps on your home screen that you want to be using more, not the ones that you feel are, you know, distracting you or like negatively impacting your goals in some way. Have them harder to get to. Put them in a folder that you have to, you know, go through your phone to find to then use.
And it doesn't mean that I don't scroll. I still scroll, but it just means, again, that there's a few extra steps involved, so I'm less likely to do it as often as I was doing before, when it was like I open the screen and Instagram is literally where my thumb is. That's what it was before. Whereas now it's like, okay, I open the screen, I see the Habits app is where my thumb is. So now I click on the Habits app first. That's my automatic thing. And then to get to Instagram, I do a few scrolls, click in a few folders, and I get there eventually. And I still use it, but it's just those extra steps makes it a little bit more mindful.
Yeah. And the other classic one is, you know, the alarm clock first thing in the morning.
Yeah, that's a great one.
So if you use your phone, it's actually really easy to hit snooze on your phone.
Yeah, you just eyes closed, swipe the thing.
Yeah.
You know, if you can reach it with your eyes closed while you're lying in bed, it's too close.
Or if you've got Siri or Google set up, you know, you don't even have to reach over to it. You just ask them to turn off the alarm. Like, that is
a recipe for disaster. People don't do that.
So, like, one of the easy fixes to that is get an old, or not an old, but an analog alarm clock or
Yeah.
something that you have to manually move over and actually turn it off,
Yeah.
that's going to create that time for you then to think, oh, maybe it's time to get up, so that
Or
it's not as easy
yeah.
to sleep in.
And you don't have to buy an alarm clock either. Something that we're going to start doing, and maybe we'll report back on how this goes. But what we're going to start doing is putting our phones just on the floor next to the bed instead of on the table. So
Yeah.
we can't just reach it and hit snooze. It takes an extra step. It takes you actually having to half roll out of bed
Yeah.
or sit up and actually reach down. There's an extra step involved to hit snooze.
That's right. It's just increasing the friction there. That's all we're really doing is, with all of these habits, anything that you want to stop doing or reduce is just increase the friction where possible. Like, try to make it harder for yourself to do that thing, and you'll be surprised at how well that actually works.
Yeah, it really does. So those are just 3 ways that you can start to set up your environment to make unhelpful habits harder, helpful habits easier, and make your general environment nicer to be in and more healthy habit promoting by keeping it clutter-free, keeping it organized where you can.
That's right, and that's essentially the key to being able to stick to your habits, especially on those days where you've had a really stressful day and autopilot tends to take over and maybe some habits get done that aren't conducive to your goals. This is how to reverse engineer that and set it up for success.
Exactly. And as we said before, it doesn't have to be an overnight thing where you fully have to change your entire house
Yeah.
and office setup in order to succeed. It's not like that at all.
Yeah.
Just start making really small changes. Try one thing this month. Try one thing next month. Like, really slow, we're talking here. Because, again, if you're deciding that you have to overhaul everything overnight, that's just adding more friction.
Yeah.
It's making it less likely that you're actually going to do it. So choose one thing that we've spoken about today, implement that, and see how it goes. Try something that you think is going to help you.
Yeah. So that's it, guys. We hope you got a lot of value out of today's episode. And as always, we will both see you in the next episode.